I mean, this audio system that I made, when, the first game that we tried to launch it in, it didn't go so well. I still will remember we're planning to ship it in a game and it had a bunch of problems. I was convinced I was going to get fired. CEO of the company came down to me. Well, always remember this lesson. Like literally I was holed up in my office. Like, this is it. I'm going to get fired. My first job out of college. He knocks on the door and he goes, "Hey, I heard you like really screwed up pretty bad. But he goes, I don't think you could screw something up this bad if you weren't trying to do something pretty cool. So just get back in there and figure it out." And then he like walked out of my office.
Well, that was Matt Booty, the head of Microsoft Xbox Studios and content, talking about words of inspiration from one of his first bosses back at Midway Games.
Not getting fired. When you think you're going to get fired. Man, I've had so many moments like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever done that? Have you ever had like oh my goodness, I just made a huge mistake, I'm going to get fired?
Not like that. I've had the deadlines. I've always, when you do art, meeting deadlines at quality it's really hard, but like breaking everything and screwing up, that's never really fell into, I've had the thing
good.
where like T-posing characters and stuff,
Oh yeah.
like
Oh,
that's a very,
but that's just a bug. That's just a bug.
easy fix.
Yeah. All right. Well, there is a lot going on these days. News of layoffs at Bungie just hit yesterday, which is kind of capping off this whole string of over 6,000. It's like, all right. So two things, weird things. All right. A lot of layoffs happening this year. And also I saw a chart in I get this Axios newsletter. I think this is where I saw it. There's a chart that this year has produced the most 90 plus rated games ever.
Dude, it's true. Like even if you didn't tell me that, I would, and this comes up in the episode.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's like, you can feel it. Everything that's coming out. It's like, oh my gosh.
That's so good. That's so good. That's so good.
Yeah.
Like it used to be like every November you'd get 3 that were going to battle it out for best game of the year.
So here's what I think.
Now it's
Tell me
every
if
month.
you think this is right. I think we hit the pandemic, right? And things started taking longer because, we're all trying to figure out how to do stuff, and things just in general sort of take longer when you're not all together. And some companies were like, okay, we got to just decide which ones we're going to bet on. And they let those games take longer, and they've benefited a lot from the extra time.
Yeah.
And they've gotten better. But at the same time, some projects have gotten canceled, and these projects have taken longer, so they're more expensive to make. So profits are getting pinged because of the extra cost, hence layoffs. That's my theory.
I think there's another element to that, which is that the industry is maturing and you're getting more people that are expensive to hire because they're professionals, so they cost more. And you're getting, wait, are you talking about the scores or the layoffs?
Like why are we seeing such high quality games come out this year, but also at the same time all these layoffs because of like pressure on the dollars?
I also think it's the maturing of the industry. Like nowadays, a lot of these games aren't doing anything new, right? They're not like, now we're doing 3D. It's like, what? And like, now we're doing, like this new, like, it's just like a better first person shooter with a better story, very polished from beginning to end. It's very tight. There's no new stuff, They're not making their own engine. So I think that has a lot to do with it.
It does feel like there's a little less of that going on, but yeah, okay. I think also it seems,
I'm not discounting
like,
what you said, man. I'm saying this is like an extra little ingredient.
No,
Okay.
I didn't think you were. You were yes and, right?
All right,
Was
yes,
that yes
and. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, good.
Alex. Yeah. All right. So yeah,
We've been
there's
so
too many dang
freaking
games
busy.
right now, dude.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and there's too many games to play too, by the way. Like I think that's another thing.
Oh god.
Like what are you playing? Like if you had to pick, you could only play
my
one of
God.
them because all those games that are like in the 90s, they're 80-hour games. Like what? When am
I
I going to play
know.
an 80-hour game? I want,
I still haven't cracked open Diablo.
That's like
I
a
love
3,000-hour game.
I know. Seems to me that we have enough proof now that we can say work from home works, right? I mean, like all these games have been built through the pandemic, everybody working from home.
Oh,
Some of these studios are kind of coming back, but nobody in our industry is really forcing that issue. A little bit, but not really. Certainly not full time.
Yeah, I think work from home
So it works, right? I mean,
it works.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit more complicated because we haven't seen the games that didn't quite work out because they got canceled. I don't know.
Okay, I'll ask you this then. Imagine if the pandemic hit during, like, from the Super Nintendo to the PS1, that era when you saw your first 3D games coming out. Do you think that the industry would have, right? There was no infrastructure for work from
No,
home
because we didn't have Zoom, we didn't
and
have
internet.
like
Yeah,
fast
okay, yeah.
internet. Yeah, it would have been, I think, very different.
I go to conspiracy camp every year, and
Okay, here we go.
I think this was a test run for the way things are going to be forever.
But
No, I'm being
what's the
serious.
forever? Are you saying the pandemic part is the forever, or just the working remotely is forever?
The working remotely is going to
Yeah.
be, it's going to be
Honestly,
like,
I kind of like working from home. I like
do
it.
too. Dude, I love my
I
office.
miss the in person. I love it when we get together. And I think we can do both. And we don't have to 40 hours a week every day commit to driving to a place just because there's a place we're supposed to drive to.
Yeah. I drive to the grocery store, by the way, every day. I'm like, I have to go to, so I'm going to, I
It's
start
very
hanging out of the
European.
grocery store. I just hang out of the grocery
It's very
store.
European. Yeah.
It's real.
All right.
Well, hold on. Before you go off, just so you know, with the work from home thing, today something happened. I had a meeting with Patrick this morning. We did like a little one-on-one because I haven't really like talked to him that much.
Our compatriot at Look North, Patrick.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he started talking about the D&D like books, right?
Mhm.
And I was like, I don't own those. And, I'm really getting into this like RPG book stuff, I was telling, I
Mhm.
think I mentioned this earlier in another talk with you. And I went to Amazon while we were talking and they were on sale and I ordered them and I got them 2 hours later at my house. Dude, it's crazy. And I was telling Pat, in
That
the
is
future, it's going
nuts.
to be a little helicopter that like just brings it to your house,
Do
right?
you think he placed that order and like somehow it went straight to the dude in the van or dudette, driving the
No.
Amazon van? They're just like, oh, here you go.
I think it went to a robot that put it in a tote, that put it in a section where an Amazon driver drives up and it's already ready for him for their route.
Do they do tours? When I was in grade school, I distinctly remember going to Tarrytown, New York to visit the General Motors assembly plant. And that was freaking fascinating for
Not anymore,
elementary
probably.
school kid.
I don't think anymore.
But how cool would it be to go on like one of those Amazon, like go to see an Amazon factory, like all the robots
or
flying
a
around
Tesla
and stuff?
factory. Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally do that.
We gotta go on one of those tours. That would be pretty cool.
I think that and printers, 3D printers are going to be like in 10 years, it's going to be so normal to have a 3D printer.
I know we're going a little long, but that does remind me. I remember the first time I heard this story that they took a 3D printer up to the International Space Station. Dude up there needed a part for something that broke. Somebody down here sent the file. He 3D printed it up on the space station and had the part. It was like, that's like as close to teleporting as we got, I think.
That is amazing. That's what's going to happen.
That's very cool. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's queue up our chat with Matt Booty. He's such a cool dude.
Dude, he started to talk. Hey, we weren't recording. I was like, oh, you can see my Warhammer stuff now. And he has all these Warhammer things. Man, yeah. And at the end of the episode, he tells us what his favorite Warhammer faction is.
Okay, well, you got to stick around to the end. Great conversation. Hope you enjoy it.
Are you a game developer or looking to become one? Consider joining the largest nonprofit professional group in the industry, the International Game Developers Association.
Do you know the IGDA chapter near you is probably hosting an event soon? And they're probably serving free pizza.
The IGDA supports game developers by providing mentorship, education, and advocacy for our craft.
Whoa, a discount on Dell computers and 75% off the Audio Hero sound effects library.
If you're as passionate about game development as we are, check out the IGDA. Visit igda.org/membership and use the code IGDA 4th Curtain 15 to get 15% off your membership.
Hello, good friends, and welcome to The Fourth Curtain. We are so lucky today to have with us one of the most influential people in all of video games. Matt, did you think you'd get introduced that way back in the day, when you're coming up? And I think your purview just got quite a bit broader. Congrats on the new role and promo. It is Mr. Matt Booty. president of game content and studios for Microsoft's Xbox business, which means he is in charge of, just a sampling here, Minecraft, Starfield, Forza, Gears of War, Elder Scrolls, Fallout, Doom, Halo.
That's it?
What a remarkable list. No, that's just that's a sampling. He's been a mainstay of Microsoft for, I think, over 13 years, maybe 13 years. And before that was president and CEO of Midway Games, hanging out in Chicago with me. Midway, of course, where Mortal Kombat comes from. And originally got to start, I read this on your LinkedIn. Originally got to start managing the audio department. Is that right? Were you managing an audio department? Wow.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, it's great to see you. It's been a hot minute. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm well, and it's good to see you. It has been a while, so thanks for having me. It's great.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for.
Are you a musician? Hold on. What's with the music thing? I didn't know about that. Are you a musician?
Yeah. How did you get into learning the sound department? I mean, we had Josh Way on it, and back in the day, I imagine they were probably, somebody said, "Hey, we need somebody to do audio," and you were not paying attention or something, and then they just grabbed you. Was that how it happened?
No, it was Josh. So he's doing great. Josh Sway over at the Jarvis Center there in Chicago. So backing up, I came out of Purdue University in the middle of Indiana with kind of a weird mix of degrees. I had undergrad degrees in computer engineering and electrical engineering with a minor in acoustics and a minor in music theory.
Wow.
And I was all set to go study more engineering in grad school. Woke up one day late in the summer, like school was going to start in like 3 weeks, and said, I've just done enough engineering. What am I doing here? And I was very fortunate to have a group of professors who got together and kind of saved me from myself. And I got into the theater program at Purdue to do a Master of Fine Arts there, with a focus on sound design and music composition and music theory. So I came into games through audio, and this will date me. I responded to an ad in the Chicago Tribune newspaper that they needed somebody who understood how to do DSP programming, so digital signal processing, audio, and also understood how to do programming in games. And so I was like, the odds of like a classified ad.
That's a unicorn.
That's incredibly.
Yeah, it's a unicorn. We keep getting unicorns, man. That's awesome.
I had no idea. You have MFA in music.
Yeah, Master Fighter. Well, so here, I'll finish that little bit out. Was also very, very fortunate to have some great professors. So I put together, I had to test into this theater program and the whole thing. But I get in and I had this strange mix of classes. It was going to be some theater stuff and then still some engineering stuff. And I show up and my major professor, like this a week before class starts, he goes, "Good news. I got good news. I canceled all of your classes." And he goes, "I look at you," and he goes, "You studied a lot of engineering. I think you're done with that." He goes, "You need to learn about the human condition." And I'm like kind of freaking out. I mean, you gotta imagine, I'm a pretty buttoned up engineer. He goes, "So I put you in the freshman acting program." So I spent the first year of grad school in the freshman acting program, which it's hard to imagine being more of a fish out of water than that, right? I mean, it was just, you gotta picture it. But he was exactly right, because the thing that it taught me about was, in the midst of all this technology stuff, about telling stories, about performers, about understanding how to take a script and how to bring it to life. The idea that there's a script and there's 1,000 ways that you can put that script on stage. It is just a starting point. And I'll say that a lot of the things that I learned in theater were so directly applicable to games, right? I mean, in theater, you've got people that make sets and they make costumes, and composers and people that do lighting. And then you've got a director who's kind of trying to bring this, and you've got a script. You might have writers, and the analogies into games in terms of, we've got level artists and we've got animators and we've got writers and people who do dialogue, and there's game directors, but even a design doc is just a starting point, right? And when something goes from a design into pixels. So for me, when I showed up in Chicago to make games, I was like, oh, this is kind of a world that I get. I can see the parallels. Another great thing is, so I see this ad in the Chicago Tribune. I keep calling this recruiter, this headhunter. I'm trying to get this job, and they're not calling me back. And I was like, this is just so strange. It seems, and I start to think there must be a lot of people out there that can do this, like this programming and audio. Turns out, for a bunch of reasons, they weren't actually getting the information from the recruiter. So I finally just called over to Midway Games, which is on the north side of Chicago, up there by the river. And as chance would have it, the switchboard operator sent me to Eugene Jarvis.
Hey.
So they're just out the blue. And so for folks that know Eugene, he is the sort of the granddaddy of games back then, the creator of Robotron, the creator of Defender. And Eugene was great, very gracious. And I'm so lucky to still consider him a friend these days. And we stay in touch through his work he's doing at DePaul there in Chicago. But I spent like 45 minutes telling him what I do. And I used to make games on my Commodore VIC-20, and I did this thing. And he's like, okay, that's all pretty cool. And he's telling me about what to do. And I'm like, can I come in for an interview? Like, can I come in? He goes, nope, I don't have anything to do with that. And you know, Eugene, that's kind of like classic.
Yep.
So I had to end up call back and ended up interviewing. But that's how I got started at Midway. So it was through the audio group doing music and audio. And that's at the time when they were working on pinball games like Funhouse and Addams Family, some pretty classic games. And all the audio was being done with a lot of guys that came out of the University of Illinois computer music program, Northwestern computer music program. You might know Brian Schmidt. He's the guy who runs the Game Sound Con today and has been involved with game audio forever. He teaches at DigiPen, and he was there doing audio for pinball games also at the time. So a lot of guys that came out of that computer music world. And the music, you had to know how to write assembly language to do
I remember,
sound. It was crazy,
Eugene
right?
was, because we chatted with Eugene. He was telling us how he actually was writing code, like basically like a synthesizer code to make sound, and that's back then. That's how you would generate.
Yeah, that's what was going on. And there's some, I could sit, I'm not going to make them, but there's some sounds to this day you remember. Think about the Smart Bomb sound in Defender. Think about the sound that plays between the levels in Robotron, that bloop, 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 bloop. It's just like, the guys like writing 6809 assembly code to make those sounds. That's great. But the first thing I did when I showed up there was work with some guys to do the first digital playback system. So this is sort of pre-MP3s. We did this multi-track digital thing, and that allowed us to go hire real musicians. One of the first things I did was work with Brian Eddy, who's a big, really well-known pinball game designer who's at Stern in Chicago still, on the Indiana Jones game, and then worked with Dan Forden on the Star Trek The Next Generation pinball game. Dan, of course, is the composer of Mortal Kombat, the guy who does the Toasty voice, so Dan is Toasty. And those were fun days. We were just really changing the way that music and audio was brought into games, and it was a lot of really smart folks. And it's, I think, great that there are people that are still in the industry today.
Yeah, just such an incredible amount of talent at Midway back in those pinball days and the early arcade days, and it's crazy. It's just crazy. And what an amazing first job.
Yeah.
And so Eugene said, "No, I don't need anybody," but I'm guessing you stuck with it and eventually, got an interview. Must have.
Yeah, well, Eugene basically said, "Hey, it sounds like you're sounds great, but you got to talk to somebody else about a job
Were you a
interview."
gamer? Were you a gamer? Were you a gamer at the time, or were you like why Midway?
Well, honestly, a lot of it just had to do with the serendipity of that ad,
because you read the Chicago Tribune. That's why. What was high school like for you? So you went to Purdue? Did you grow up in Indiana or grow up around Chicago? Or
yeah, so I grew up in South Bend, Indiana, which is where Notre Dame is. It's pretty close to Chicago, pretty close to Michigan. High school, I was pretty involved in science programs, and a lot of folks, you hear the story, I got an Apple II, I got a VIC-20, and I made my first game. I was doing things with my VIC-20 that I've always been just more into building things. I still am amazed that I got this to work when I think back. But one of the first things, they made those little expansion carts for the VIC-20 that would give you more graphics. And out of one of the magazines, like Compute or something, that you could build a light pen. And I was like, this is amazing. So I actually managed to build a light pen that you plugged into the joystick port on a VIC-20 so I could draw on my TV, right? And to me,
That's
was like,
crazy. Yeah.
I mean, and it was jittery and it had problems, but those are the kinds of things. And in college, was as part of engineering, did a lot of coding, a lot of programming, didn't have much time to really play games, did play a lot of Double Dragon. In fact, somewhere back here, I've got, actually, I think it's on my screen right now, the latest Double Dragon. Played a lot of Double Dragon at the Purdue Student Union. But, again, this will date me. I was in the first C programming class that they offered to undergrads. And it was a big topic of debate. Should they even let undergrads program in C? Because, with that level of power, who knew what problems they were going to cause?
That's cool.
That's amazing. So, okay. So growing up, you did have a computer, South Bend, then Purdue, engineering, and then this crazy left turn into theater, which I got to imagine, I mean, you said as much, has served you very well. And I got to imagine it probably serves you very well today, and how you have to communicate with so many different groups and different people. And I got to imagine that theater training has been useful in that. But so at Midway, how did things go from, you started in audio and then what was that? What was Midway like back then? Like how big was it when you got there? When did Mortal Kombat come out? What were you doing when it did?
Yeah, well, I can tell you, I had an office across the hall from Ed Boon when he was working on the first Mortal Kombat. Like, our offices were kind of literally across the hall. And also just feel very fortunate to still consider Ed a friend. NetherRealm and Warner Brothers still doing really well there. It was a really amazing playground. I mean, it was an opportunity. We were building new hardware. We were just trying out new things. So many advancements at the time, right? I mean, the move from hand-drawn to digital video captured imagery to the first 3D to our first mocap studio. I mean, there was a lot of change.
Yeah.
It was really exciting times. And, a lot of folks that were really encouraged to try stuff out. I mean, this audio system that I made, it went, the first game that we tried to launch it in, it didn't go so well. I still will remember we were planning to ship it in a game and it had a bunch of problems. I was convinced I was going to get fired. CEO of the company came down to me. Well, always remember this lesson. Like, literally, I was holed up in my office. Like, this is it. I'm going to get fired. My first job out of college. He knocks on the door and he goes, "Hey, I heard you really screwed up pretty bad, but he goes, I don't think you could screw something up this bad if you weren't trying to do something pretty cool. So just get back in there and figure it out."
Oh,
then he
that's
walked out
cool.
of my office.
Yes, that's awesome.
And,
Was that Neil?
It was Neil. And to this
Okay.
day, I don't if he'll remember that, but that taught me a lot, which was how you can just come in and, acknowledge that things aren't going the best, but you got to, get behind people and encourage
I love
them to
that.
keep going.
I love that sentiment, that story. This is a little bit of an aside, but Aaron, do you remember when our intern erased
Oh, the entire
repository
everything in the
at
studio.
yeah.
He dragged everything into the trash can and everything was gone.
Yeah.
Everything, like marketing,
It,
assets.
I don't.
everything.
I don't think I gave him I don't think I gave him the same. I don't think I gave him the same message that Neil gave you. Yeah.
It's like, where's everything at? Deleted.
Yeah, we ended up okay. But yeah, mistakes happen. But okay, that's.
What'd you do with? Yeah, what
I love
happened?
hearing
What's
that.
the story? Yeah.
Well, we got it working, and the first game it shipped in was Indiana Jones, and that one was still a little rough. I'll tell you, the thing that I think proved it was all going to work was the Star Trek: The Next Generation pinball game. We got the whole cast to come and do voices, including Patrick Stewart. And I mean, there's so many stories from those days people had to work with. We're chasing Patrick Stewart. His agent is telling us, there's no, are you kidding? This guy's a trained Shakespearean actor. He's never going to do it.
Sir Patrick Stewart now,
And
right?
finally, I guess the story goes, somebody caught up with him at a party or something and said, these pinball guys are trying to get a hold of you to do this game. And he said, I love pinball. Like, where do I go? And so he showed up, and I'll just always remember, you put the money in, you hit start, and you get his welcome aboard, and it's just like so great. It just makes the game, right? So there are a lot of stories like that. And then a guy who today still works with Eugene, George Petro, who runs part of Play Mechanics, which is part of Raw Thrills. Actually, in a big circle of life moment, Play Mechanics and George actually built the Halo coin-op arcade game that we made.
The big giant monster one.
Big one,
yeah. Because Aaron and I said we were out go-kart racing and in the arcade room back there.
It's huge.
And we're looking at it like, this thing is
a car.
Huge.
It's really,
the four players sit down. It's and that was a cool moment for me, some 20 some years later, that a guy that, I had worked with, and then here we are working again. So George really then gave me the break to move over from audio to game design and game programming. So worked on what was at the time our first 3D fighting game. So this is around the era of like the first Virtua Fighter, around when you think about Tekken, Soul Calibur. I think it was like Tekken 2 at the time. So we did this game, War Gods. A little, maybe you could say it's a little infamous. It was maybe not the best fighting game, but it was the first 3D game for us, and also the first game that had a disc drive in it. So, those are the things we were doing at the time. And George was like, look, come over and work on this with me. So we did that. And then after that, I got to go run a team myself. We made a outer space racing game called Hyperdrive, which is kind of a Wipeout inspired thing. Beautiful looking game. We worked with the people, if you remember the old 3DFX video cards.
Oh, yeah.
So this is early first kind of standalone GPU.
It's amazing. Like in this one story, you're talking about when the first 3D arcade games came out, because I remember when Virtua Fighter came out. I think also at that same time frame, it was like Virtua Cop, and there was another one. Was there like a Virtua Racing 2 or something?
There was Virtua Racing in Daytona.
I remember these games coming out, and at the time, they looked sort of flat shaded. They didn't really have sophisticated texturing, and the general vibe looking at them was like, I don't know. But obviously, everything is 3D now. Same thing with the video cards, like 3DFX. Comes out with these video graphics accelerators, and it's like, it's an add-on. It's not,
that was in the cart, right?
Really gonna take, and then
the 3DFX was in the cart.
Yeah, it was a card that actually you put in.
You could put in your PC, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you put in your PC.
But both of those are like, I think just the power of play and games or whatever just drove these things that were, when they first came out, you had to have a little bit of forward vision, I guess, to realize that they were really going to stick, and you guys were all over that stuff.
Yeah, well, there were other things like, I remember, if you remember, one of the first racing games to use that chipset was San Francisco Rush, which was the first arcade game that used Ethernet to link city to city. And that early work, some of the guys that worked on that actually went on to be part of the team that created early versions of things like Xbox Live, and the idea that we can play multiplayer over on consoles. But there was a time when these arcade operators are like, you want to put an Ethernet in my arcade? What's Ethernet? Like, what is?
Even as you said it, I was like, even now, I'm like, what? There's an Ethernet in an arcade. Yeah.
And now everything is linked there. So so I got to work on that. I did a racing game. I've always loved racing games. It's such a privilege today to get to hang out with the team at Turn 10 that does Forza Motorsport and Forza Horizon. But we did a championship auto racing team, licensed racing game. And then, that was in the days when video games were just dominated by sports games, right? So I was leading the studio, and we were shipping things like NBA Ballers and NFL Blitz. At one point, Midway had a hockey game, we had a baseball game, MLB Slugfest, and those were just great times. I think back to working on NBA Ballers. That was just a really cool game, and a lot of those guys on that team. Mike Builder, who led that, he is over at with the You Don't Know Jack guys over there.
He's running Jackbox now, right? Yeah.
And a lot of the folks that were doing tech for those games are over at Iron Galaxy now, right? So a lot of
that's right. Blitz, man, we played so much Blitz in our San Jose studio. It was like when we were doing Oni, we played a ton of Virtua Tennis and a ton of Blitz. That
Those
was
two are
our
classics, yeah.
decompression. Yeah.
Virtual tennis. I like that one. Yeah. So then there's a lot of stuff after that of just sort of moving more into studio management. At one point was the head of studios for Midway. You know, we acquired things like Surreal Software up here in Seattle
that.
area. Right. And we had a studio down in Austin for a while. We even had a studio over in Australia. We had a studio
Do you
up
have one in
in
San Diego as well?
we
You have-
did. We did. That was where Midway Home Entertainment was, the guys
Yeah.
that did all the ports. And at one point we had a studio in Newcastle in the UK. And that's where I first met Craig Duncan, who of course runs Rare for us today. He's just a great leader, great person.
Right on.
Is in charge of the
So
cool
hold on.
teams
You
over at Rare.
you kind of buried a little sentence there where you said, and then I got into studio management.
Casually.
And then,
whatever.
yeah. And so I've made games and I've run teams, and for me, they're very different things. How did that, was that you raised your hand? Was that we need somebody and you got recruited? And obviously you're exceptionally good at it because you tell us how good you are, but from the outside.
It's a wooden office.
Yeah.
Sure,
I think you're doing all right.
Yeah. Just look at the paneling behind you. Very good at it.
Let's check in a couple of years. We'll get on that one. I think it was a combination of things. A little bit back to what you were saying about some of the things learned in theater. Maybe I had the ability to talk to the management and talk to business teams and kind of explain what we were doing. I mean, games had gotten a lot more complicated, right? I mean, budgets were going up, timelines were going up, 3D meant mocap, and just everything got more complicated. So, it was pretty easy to get your head around a game that might take 6 months, a year to make, right? And suddenly games are taking 2 years, 3 years, are costing a lot more. And so there was, I think, a need for more of that. And I just, I felt that was where I could add value, which was, really providing that level of support, call it even a level of air cover, but, that bridge between the game teams and then what was becoming increasingly the complicated business of games, particularly as we moved from, selling arcade games, which is pretty direct, right? You're selling this arcade game to somebody that's going to go put it in an arcade. There's not a whole lot of complicated business in between there. But in the case of moving into home games and consoles, you've got all these relationships, at the time with PlayStation, with Nintendo, with Sega, with Xbox. And it was just really an opportunity to provide that leadership, provide that level of support, air cover. And really, I think it came out of just a feeling of responsibility to the craft of making games. As budgets go up, business pressure goes up.
Yeah.
And, there starts to be, and I mean, this as well as anybody, just the amount of kind of inputs coming into the game from the business side and the marketing side start to go up, which is great because, we're in the business of making games, but sometimes it's easy for the craft of games and the process to get lost in that.
That's
and,
right.
I think I could add some value there.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I can imagine you found yourself in a position where teams who are making games would trust and respect you because you'd been there, and management that was looking for the confidence to invest would trust you as well because you could speak their language, but you also had the experience making games. So that makes a lot of sense. Do you miss it? Do you miss making?
I do. A lot of times I'll get asked, like, what games are you playing? What are you playing? And now I've got young kids. I've got a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and it's great to start playing games with the 4-year-old. But when I've got, an hour here, an hour there, or something like that, my time really goes towards working in Unity, right? Like making my own games. Like right now, I'm trying to finish the music on a tower defense game that I'm working on. If you go on my LinkedIn, I post articles about some of the stuff. So I still like coding. I like, working in 3D. I try to build things that really are end to end, that are sort of complete little games. So that means like the art, the music, the menus, everything. And I do miss it. It is tempting sometimes because I just have access. I could go spend weeks hanging out with the flight simulator team if I wanted to. Whether they would like that or not, I don't know. But certainly there's days when I'm like, man, what would be great now is just to I could go spend the afternoon hanging out with the Gears of War team and sitting in on some mocap session, and that'd be a lot more fun.
It sounds like Gears of War is being played right now. The chainsaw effect.
Yeah, sorry, I got the blower going.
He's playing Gears of War right now while he does the
sound
interview.
effect.
He's chainsawing a couple.
Yeah. Hey, quick aside. Yeah, quick aside. I found this. I don't know if you guys published this or if somebody put it together, but I found this Xbox First Party Studios organization org chart that I think it looks like it's an internal doc, and it's just a layout of all the studios, projects, brands, etc. And I'm just looking at it, and you have, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like in your domain, Halo, Doom, and Gears of War.
Yeah. Which
like,
is, I mean,
what is that like? I mean, because like, it just boggles my mind, because I came up, looking at Doom, going, oh man, like we got to do stuff that's cool like that, and then we ended up making Halo, and then Cliffy did the same thing with John and with Halo as well, and so like these games all kind of came out of like this weird crucible that started in the 90s and sort of evolved and off of each other and many iterations. So yeah, what's it like having all that history in there?
Well, I mean, it's just fantastic being around those teams. I mean, just this morning we saw the latest stuff that the coalition is working on up in Vancouver, the Gears of War team there. The chance to go down and meet Marty and Hugo and the team at id and see what they're working on. And of course, Halo just right here in Redmond and getting, spending time with that team. I think it's an interesting thing to think about portfolio management, right? I mean, all three of those are so unique in their own way. I mean, I think about, Gears of War. What is that game about? It's about, it's really more, it's got a horror element to it. It's about belonging. It's about, sort of brotherhood in the broader sense of like community, right? It's about, the message there is your friends will pull you through. I think about Halo. Halo to me is so great because it has always been optimistic sci-fi, right? The message of Halo is that humans will prevail and that they'll go through some things, but that humanity always comes through, which I always like. And, you think about Gears, the scope is, it's very constrained, at times claustrophobic, and Halo is so expansive. I mean, somewhere on one of these shelves behind me, I've got like, the Halo encyclopedia, right? And it's like 2 inches thick just to, understand the lore. And then you start to think about Doom, which is so rooted in mechanics and gameplay and just the purest sort of expression of that kind of a shooter game, right? And I love the fact that, we've got all of those, as part of the overall portfolio, as part of the lineup. They're all very different. And I also, exciting to just see those leaders and those teams be able to connect with each other. We, I think it was about 3 weeks ago, got together all of the studio heads from Xbox Game Studios, as well as from the ZeniMax Bethesda studios together for an offsite for a few days. And it was really like the first time some of them had even met. And,
wow.
You stand in front of a room with that level of creative talent, those kinds of creative leaders. And I think we had everybody put on a Post-it note how many years they'd been in the industry. And when we added it up across that whole, I think it was like 1,000 years of it. Which is just amazing. I mean, when you think about
what do you
say?
What do you say to that group? Yeah, well, no, I can imagine. I mean, that you've got probably the coolest job in ever. But like, it's so you get all these people together who have 1,000 years of experience and working on the biggest games of all time and visionaries, etc. I'm curious, but how do you kick it off? What do you say?
So it's a great question. I'll tell you the two things that we focused on. The first thing is how important it is that all the games matter. Because on the one hand, you've got these huge franchises like Skyrim, like Halo. You've got these just things that have been around for 20 years that have, had, tens of millions of people played over their lifetimes. On the other side, you've got Tim Schafer, who has been on your show at Double Fine, making games like Psychonauts and smaller games. And then you've got teams like at Obsidian that made Pentiment, which is, as I like to call it, the medieval monastery murder mystery. I always joke that's the
That's
genre
on Game
that's heating
Pass.
up, right? And with the fact that those two extremes and everything in between matter. That our job is to create a studio system where those things can all coexist, and that we create a place where creative people feel that they are safe and supported, that they can be their authentic selves, they can do their best work, and that creativity isn't just sort of a possibility, that it becomes an inevitability, right? That we really think of it like, it's a little maybe worn out metaphor, but it's a greenhouse in some ways.
Yeah.
And so the first thing we say is, look, whether it's Psychonauts and Pentiment, whether it's State of Decay, whether it's Gears of War, it's Flight Simulator, we just have such a variety, and it all matters because I think that all of those games contribute to a healthy portfolio. So that's the first real thing that we get at, is that we wanted that group to be a network of peers, and that there isn't this sense of a hierarchy where, the ultimate destiny is for everybody to work on Halo. Like, that's
Right.
not our system, right? Then the second thing came about over the course of the days, and we were very lucky. We were in New York City, and we have some contacts in the music industry, and we had a marketing leader for one of the bigger record labels come in, and he gave us this wisdom that said, look, my job and what I think your job is to fiercely protect your craft and fiercely protect your artists. That is your job. Is that for everybody in this room, as a leader of a creative organization, is you got to protect your craft, you got to protect your artists. And that kind of became a bit of a rallying cry, because back to, there's a lot of change in the industry, where we play games, how we play games, it's all expanding. We're doing great things for our players. We want to meet them where we are. We want to have a great variety of games, but there's a lot of surface area to cover and a lot of sort of inputs again to that. And the main thing, I think, our studio system depends on a group of highly empowered creative leaders, people like Tim Schafer, Brian Fargo, Todd Howard, who are going to hopefully get supported to go do their thing, to, pursue their craft. And we've got to make sure that the other stuff doesn't get in the way. And that doesn't, we've got schedules, we've got budgets, all these things matter. But, I think for our first time that we got that group together, those are the two things that we oriented to.
Yeah. Well, I find that super encouraging to hear, because as organizations get bigger, it is easy for many voices and to try to figure out like which ones matter. And so very, very encouraging to hear the perspective of leaning into protecting the craft, protecting the creative and all that. So does that mean, this was something I'm just legit curious about, are you trying to do sort of a slate strategy across the entire portfolio, or is it mostly managing like release timing and things like that? Or is there any, like you have,
with all those nines,
like
right?
with, if you,
there's like a lot of nines in that portfolio, and I imagine releasing them at the same time.
Like, how do you even find window? You're gonna have more
like
than 12
yeah.
big releases. Like, how are you gonna manage the windows?
Yeah, so I kind of would think about that on the tactics. For sure, the portfolio management, the release timing, those things are going to become more important. We've got a goal of a big game, a new release, a big game, something significant going out 4 times a year, right? So every 3 months, we've got something new coming out. And, I think with Starfield, and then going into Forza Motorsport, and then as we head into next year, 2024, we showed the game Ara and the game's Towerborn at Gamescom. We've got Hellblade 2 that comes later. So it feels like we're getting there. The tactics of how we manage that release schedule certainly become front and center. On the strategy, we can talk about these franchises that have sort of how much money they've made or how long they've been around. I think the most important thing out of all that, though, is the communities that they have, right? When you think about the fact that the Halo community, which is really, I wanted a big shout out and thank you for sticking with us over the next years. We've started to build ourselves back from some challenges we've had. But you think about the communities around something like Elder Scrolls Online. You think around even the flight sim community. You think around, a community that exists around things like the Gears of War community that we talked about, right? And then you get into all the players on the Blizzard franchises, like the Warcraft fans. I think, BlizzCon is coming up this weekend, right? We just had QuakeCon a while ago. We just a couple Sundays ago had Minecraft Online, Minecraft Live. I was downtown at the Halo World Championship esports. I mean, these are the communities, and I think those are the things that really are the power and the excitement of what we've got here. And when we think about the strategy and our strategy of people can play the games they want with the friends they want on the devices they want, that all begins with those big communities that have formed around those games.
Yeah.
In many ways, we don't own these games. Like at best, we're sort of stewards of them, right? And it comes with a big responsibility to listen to the communities and, really build some of these bigger things in partnership with them, right? I mean, they've been with the games as long as we have, and really are such a big factor.
Yeah, so it sounds like the thought process around like what to do and when to do it is more rooted in that community approach than, say, a spreadsheet of dates.
Yeah, I mean, the dates and the release schedule, they all matter. But, I've said we don't necessarily have what I would call portfolio bingo, right? Like the joke that I make is we're missing a 3D platformer with a rodent mascot. Like, so quit. Somebody go make that. Like, that's not, we really want to build games.
Is that not Crash Bandicoot? Is that, yeah, I think you got that now.
You never know. But I think we want our teams to make the games that they're passionate about making and then support them to turn those into things that are good business and good for our players. And if we can kind of connect those dots, that makes a lot of sense. But we start more with what are the teams passionate about is really the sort of the starting point.
Are you involved with Game Pass at all?
Well, the platform side of things is colleague Seropian, who handles all of the sort of the business side of Xbox now and a lot of the platform stuff. That team manages Game Pass, but as first party, bringing a lot of the stuff over to Game Pass, obviously we work, really closely with them. Yeah,
it's the best. Like, it's really cool, like, service. I tell everybody to get it all the time because it's like all the all the games on there.
Matt's shaking
and
his
you got it running in the background.
I
can see it. It is the best. It's like $10 a month. You can play everything. It's crazy.
I got a new slogan.
It's the best. By the way, do you have any real? Because I keep staring at the arcades on the back there. Do you have any real ones like from Midway? Did you buy? Did you keep any?
I don't, and I should. Let's just say that's one of like, I have a bit of a regret. When we worked on games, just for a small price, we would get one of the games. And I know a lot of the guys from those days that had big garages or big houses have got quite a collection. For a bunch of reasons, I never did. But that's partly why I've got this big collection.
Well, I mean, Christmas is coming up, I don't know. Maybe you could set you up. So one thing that I'm really curious about, because my son, he just started his first year of college, but growing up, he was just huge into Minecraft. And I remember when the acquisition happened, and my recollection is that you were pretty much front and center. What was that like? I mean, like must have been one of the largest game acquisitions at the time. Still very sizable, different culture and country, different kind of game, almost a platform.
Was it more than Star Wars?
Minecraft.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Oh, I know, but was it more than Star Wars?
No.
The price.
You tell me, Matt. But the number that's in my head is I think you guys paid $2 something for Minecraft, and Disney paid $4 something for Star Wars, for Lucas.
Okay.
So more than Star Wars.
Those. I'll just say that was a magical time for me. So I did have a great privilege of being on the team and helping lead the team that did the acquisition, and then for the next 4 years, being able to lead that franchise, from Redmond with the team at Mojang, and with leaders over there like Jens, who is, Jeb, who brought so much to the game, did so much of the coding, so much of the design. I am grateful for that opportunity because that is where I really did learn the importance of community and how much the community matters and how much they contributed to the game. The whole interaction between people that stream the game and YouTubers and people that create content and some very sophisticated people that were making almost professional level content for the game, all the way to just people that wanted to contribute to the game. That whole spectrum of community and how you work with them. That was just the opportunity to learn so much, and just a wonderful group of people. Today, Minecraft is led by Helen Chang, who took that over when I took the role leading the studios. She's grown it into a great business. They continue to expand. It was just a really magical time, and we just learned so much from that acquisition and getting the chance to work with them. Yeah.
What was it? Did you press the button on the website for the wire transfer? Was it a novelty check really large?
Really big check?
Maybe I'll share one last story. There is a guy on our team who's always run around taking pictures. And, he has got this picture of me on a Saturday afternoon. And I'm like, my hair is all messed up and I've got my head in my hands because I'm totally stressed out because it was down to the final minutes of getting the deal complete. There were some deadlines involved that had been in place, and we had to get it done, but there were some approvals that got out of sync. So we were running around on a Saturday afternoon trying to get approvals from Microsoft executives like our CFO and our CEO. And there was this 1 hour limbo where these approvals are out of sync. And once again, I was having one of those, oh my goodness, this is where I'm getting fired. I just screwed up this deal. How can this be? And every now and then he'll trot this picture out and show it to me, and I'll be like, "Yep, that was a stressful hour right there." But it all came together. And then somebody did press the button, and off it went.
Just remarkable. It's just remarkable.
That's awesome.
All right, Matt, you got time for one last question? Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
Cool. Well, so you're in a fairly enviable position or a unique position, I guess, where you've got a lot of studios that you now have a relationship with, or you have had a relationship with for a long time. I'm always curious. I love studio. I love studio culture, and I've had a few. And have you noticed anything that your studios have in common, or things that you see out of a game team or a creative team that makes you go either feel confident, or here's some opportunity for some coaching, or anything that you've noticed having the purview that you have that is you know what, I always find really good teams do X or anything like that.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, the range of games and the range of studios that we've got is so wide, but we recently were able to visit a lot of the studios as part of Activision Blizzard King. We were over in Stockholm and London with the King teams making Candy Crush and Farmio Saga. And then, just a few days later, we were down visiting with Blizzard, right, and getting to meet with those teams. And I'll say one of the things that it's both kind of a barometer of how the studio is doing, as well as just one of my favorite parts of a studio visit is, are people excited to show off what they're working on? Right. One of the coolest things about games compared to maybe some other art forms, I just think that anybody who works on a game, in some way, their fingerprint kind of shows up on screen, right? There's some way that everybody gets a little piece of them that shows up in the pixels, right? And I think I just love when you run into people that are just anxious to look what I'm working on, right? We go over and we visited Playground Games, where they make the Forza Horizon series, and we're walking around and there's a guy who's got a big stack of race car tires next to his desk. And who's that? They're like, that's Tire Guy. And Tire Guy wants all about
Tire
tired,
guy.
right? And I'm just like, I'll sit and listen to Tire Guy for an hour. This is great. And then, you go over and you're at King in London and you've got excited people that are just really thinking about these concepts about like flow and like how does a game, get you into a rhythm and a flow, and are there places they can remove distractions so that, you sort of stay in this rhythm and this flow of the game. And they would sit and talk about that for half an hour. And I love it. So that's really one, just we've got such a wide, we've got what we call like a culture of cultures. Like all the studios have their own thing and they're all unique, but I'm just always anxious to go and like see what people are working on. And I just find that when people are excited and they want to share what they're working on, it's just such a good indicator that like, okay, this is cool. Like this is good stuff is happening here.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, the passion.
Can I ask one last question? Just one last one. What's your favorite Warhammer faction? Because we started the call before we started recording. You have all this Warhammer stuff.
So like Emil, our head of first party PR, he plays the game and is deep into it. I come at Warhammer more from the model building painting. So like, you probably can't see it, but I've got this stash of like things. I just buy the ones that look cool and look like they'll be fun to paint. But the little green, glowing, the Necrons, those guys, I like them.
The Necrons, they're awesome.
Them over here too. But the painting and the building is the fun part for me.
Right on.
I love that too. Yeah.
All right, Matt, thank you for spending an afternoon with us. It's so great to catch up. And, we've talked to some of the folks that are on your team. They really like being on your team. So whatever you're doing, keep it up. Seems like it's working. And really looking forward to all the games that are coming out. It's just incredible.
Well, great. Thanks. Well, it's been wonderful to spend time with you guys. It's fun to catch up, and just thanks for the opportunity to talk about what we're doing and take a little trip down memory lane too. So
right on. All right. Thanks. We'll see you around.
Matt.
It's so much fun catching up with Matt. How crazy. Another Chicago. Yeah, Chicago.
I didn't even think that when you're living there, you don't think that. It's weird when you're there, because the industry is so small, though. But it's not. It's crazy.
And we were talking about, because this fascinates me, that under his watch, there's Gears of War, Halo, and Doom. And I just totally neglect to point out that Call of Duty is also at Microsoft now too. Yeah.
Dude, does that mean game?
So, what other...
What?
What? Did you just realize all that stuff's coming to Game Pass?
I didn't even think about asking him. I felt like such a noob whenever we're talking.
Why do you think they spent the 60?
Dude, that's the future, man. I'm telling you right now. That is going to be Game Pass is Netflix for video games. If you don't have Game Pass and you're a game developer or a game person,
all right, come on, just take
Alex
it down
doesn't
a little
have
bit.
Game Pass. That's what I said.
Of course, everybody's got Game Pass.
It is
a good deal.
Anyways,
it's a good deal.
I felt like a noob. I felt like I asked. Whenever you tell people you make video games, they in their brain they go, "Oh, he plays video games all day." Do you know what I mean? So I felt like when I asked him, "Hey, are you?"
We do.
I thought his Game Pass was under his thing too, and he was like, "No, that's somebody else, bro." It's like, no, in my mind, it's like they're all connected.
I gotta say, I was so fortunate to have been at Microsoft at the beginning of Xbox.
Oh, he's next,
by the way, our next episode's gonna be pretty good that way. But in any case, it's just how far they've grown and come. Like and the execution of the strategy of building this enormous footprint of content, and just the best content too. With, Blizzard now, and what they're doing with Game Pass is like the execute. I don't know that there are many companies that could get to that scale, and invest that long. It'd be really interesting to see if it has that kind of outsized payoff. If Xbox was an independent business that was going like for an IPO right now, they might be worth as much as Microsoft is. Well, maybe not. That's kind of far-fetched, but you know what I'm saying? It's like when you say it's like the Netflix of games, I think they're way more the Netflix of games than say Netflix.
Oh yeah,
is.
no, I meant Game Pass itself was like the app, and I never thought I'd say this, but I think after this acquisition, I think they might be the best game company in the world now, probably. Like Nintendo is.
Well, it's a very impressive lineup.
Oh, you know what I mean?
Come on, like Nintendo's got an amazing. I think they're way more in the mix game-wise.
They're like the Disney. They're like a Disney, right? Like a Disney, would you say? You know, Disney owns Marvel and Star Wars, and they have, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's a slightly similar playbook. Very interesting.
And that they're kind of, that's what I mean. Whereas Disney is considered the entertainment monolith in Hollywood, right? Because they own like,
I think they're the biggest entertainment company. They got to be.
No.
Yeah.
But yeah. Pretty cool that he does Warhammer.
Let's hope they keep it fresh. I think, you know, Disney has made maybe a couple too many Marvel things.
Well, they're just making money with it. They're making content. It's like free. It's a free.
I don't know. I just can't keep up. I can't keep up with everything. I couldn't even tell you what the next Marvel movie is. What's the next? Is it the Marvels?
I think it is.
Is that even a movie or a TV show? That's a movie.
I don't know. I stopped. There's no time, dude.
I know we were so on the edge of our seat with the Avengers and that whole era.
They're not the same. Admit it. They're not the same.
What do you mean?
I think the Avengers, like, I think that was like where they peaked, and it's been slowly like.
I agree.
And I think like Daredevil was kind of their peak show, or no. Daredevil Marvel. That was on Netflix. Remember, the blind guy, the lawyer. I don't it's good. You'd like it. Punisher was good too.
Loki was good.
I like Loki. That's true. Really Loki was good.
Yeah. The second, I'm confused by the second one.
I haven't started that. I'm gonna wait till more stuff comes out and then I'll binge, because there's no time. You know.
Okay. Well, we got a little sidetracked here, but it is an interesting analogy to like look at how Disney has grown their business with the aggregation of Marvel, Pixar, Marvel, and Lucas, and how Microsoft's growing their business through the aggregation of Bethesda, Activision, including Blizzard, and a lot of other stuff. And it's a very impressive roster of games they have on Game Pass, like Disney launched Disney Plus. You know, there a lot of news recently about Disney possibly buying EA. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure EA has the right property mix for Disney. I still think Nintendo would be the best match.
I bet you Disney. Microsoft buys EA.
Yeah, I never considered Microsoft buying Disney, but that could theoretically
Microsoft
happen.
buys Disney? No.
Yeah, I don't really know that that's in the cards.
Like, what about Microsoft buying?
Microsoft is like I think Microsoft's like top 5 market cap in the world. They're $1 trillion company. I think they could buy Disney probably. I just don't think Disney's
that just seems like problems, you know? That's like, you know what I'm saying? That's just like,
oh yeah. No, that seems like problems.
It's going to be more expensive managing the YouTube comments of all our properties. Like, could you imagine? No. I think EA makes more sense.
No, yeah, I can't wrap my head around that.
EA's games are on Game Pass, so there's a lot of EA games on Game Pass.
So what makes sense to you that Microsoft buys EA? I don't think that won't pass antitrust.
What is that? What does that mean?
With all the trouble they had getting Activision in there, the U.S. government and the European Union and the British government, they'd be like, nah, monopoly, forget it.
Really?
No way.
I don't know anything about that stuff. At Conspiracy Camp, we don't talk about that.
Yeah. Too practical.
Wait, hold on. Before we go, let's tell everybody about the next season. Like, we're about to take a break here with some episodes, and there's a Kickstarter maybe.
Yeah, we got the holidays coming up. We're gonna spend a little time with the fam, but we're already planning season 2. Which we're gonna kick off in the new year.
Awesome.
We've got
it's crazy. And the last guest of this season is awesome too. It's like crazy.
It's a great bookend. We're very excited. We're very excited about that, and we're going to kick off a Kickstarter as well. Help grow a couple of parts of the show. Add another segment, which we'll be producing every other week. All right. Well, thanks for sticking around for this episode of The Fourth Curtain. I hope you enjoyed it. We had a great time chatting with Matt Booty, and we will see you next week. Time.
Thank you for listening to The Fourth Curtain podcast. To get a peek at upcoming episodes or to send in questions to the show, visit our site at thefourthcurtain.com. And be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again for listening.